Hey, there's the red light. What a deal. Here we go. We are in the sixth chapter of the book of the prophet Jeremiah. And we may finish this up today. I'm not sure. There are not many verses, but there's some big ideas contained in those verses. God has been pronouncing judgment for 2.5 chapters. Well, for 1.5 chapters. And it's big. It's going to be all inclusive. No one will escape the destruction, but God offers many people the chance to escape the captivity. He offers them a route of rescue, and it involved asking for the old paths, where is the good way, and walking therein. And they said, we will not walk therein. And it also involved hearken to the sound of the trumpet of the watchman that I've set over you. And they said, well, we won't hearken, we won't listen. So he continues pronouncing the judgment and tells them that Babylon is going to come and destroy them, just as it was predicted and prophesied in the writings of Isaiah and Micah 120 plus years before. Now, we pick up today in verse 26. I will just read beginning in verse 18, yesterday's discussion or text, so that we can bring us up to date. I will say one thing. I've been getting many questions, and people are asking me if what's starting in Israel right now is the Ezekiel war, the first Gog and Magog war. I don't believe it is, because it doesn't fulfill the scripture in one respect. You see, early in the week, the United States sent the Gerald R. Ford task force to the Eastern Mediterranean. And it's not just the biggest aircraft carrier that we have, it's a whole range of destroyers and cruisers and destroyers and other tenders. We're talking about, a dozen, 15, 20 ships, all warships that support the Gerald R. Ford. They're there off the coast, able to reach any target in Lebanon or Syria or Egypt, which Egypt doesn't want to get involved at all. They won't even let Hamas retreat into Egypt. But they would be able to strike any immediate player that happened to come into the game. Also, they have B-52s. And they could reach any target that might rear its head against Israel at this point. So what happens in the Ezekiel war is that Israel stands alone against an alliance of Turkey and Persia, Iran, Syria, and Russia. Now, Russia's involved in this because the Syrians, the Hamas rebels don't have the technology for those those guided missile drones, those armored drones. That's Russian technology. So the Russians are involved. Also, all the American arms that Hamas is using against Israel that were stolen by Afghanistan when we left all the equipment there, they're being recovered right now by the IDF, and so they got into the hands of Hamas somehow, didn't they? But in the Ezekiel war, these nations are lined up against Israel, and nobody in the world supports Israel in the Ezekiel war. And God miraculously delivers them from the enemy. That hasn't happened yet. It's going to happen. But it can't be this war because the United States is supporting militarily, and at least verbally, so is Great Britain and the European Union and NATO. So, to one degree or another. So, you can't say that Israel is without help with the United States Naval Task Force sitting in international waters off of the coast of Israel. Now, I am more and more believe that this is what they call the Psalm 83 war, because of the way that it comes about, where the enemies of Israel see an opportunity because of weakness that they're going to go in and take a spoil. They're going to go in because they don't believe anybody will help them. Because Iran figured that the United States internal politics were so scrambled that we couldn't do anything. And the politics in Israel, internal politics there, are so scrambled that Iran thought they couldn't do anything, so they sent their proxy. Their proxies in Lebanon and Syria have started to get involved a little bit, but they're just skirmishes. And I don't think they're going to do much with the Gerald R. Ford sitting off the coast within missile range of any of those targets. I just don't believe it's going to happen. So, yes, it could be the Psalm 83 war, but the Ezekiel war doesn't fit. It just doesn't fit the prophecy. And unless the prophecy fits the facts, or the facts fit the prophecy, either way, they have to fit perfectly, or the prophecy's a lie. The prophecy's not a lie. The circumstances do not align for it to be the Ezekiel war. And so I tend to think it is the Psalm 83 war, and it could be a prelude to the Isaiah 17 war, which is the complete destruction of Syria, Damascus, which has never happened before. So it's a future prophecy. That could happen were any of the elements in Syria to get involved, either the Russian-supported government of Bashar Assad, or the Bashir, or the Iranian-supported militias in Syria, who are well equipped, by the way. Their meddling could lead to the Isaiah 17 war. You can read those chapters and see how they match up. Psalm 83 and Isaiah 17 are two different wars, and neither one of them have happened yet. Scratch Ezekiel war off your list. The Gog Magog Part 1, this ain't it. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Yesterday, beginning in chapter 6, verse 18, we'll just recap. Therefore hear, ye nations, and know, O congregation, what is among them. Hear, O earth, behold, I will bring evil upon this people, even the fruit of their thoughts, because they have not hearkened unto my words, nor to my law, but rejected it. To what purpose cometh there to me incense from Sheba, and the sweet cane from a far country? Your burnt offerings are not acceptable, nor your sacrifices sweet unto me. Therefore thus saith the Lord, behold, I will lay stumbling blocks before this people, and the fathers and the sons together shall fall upon them. The neighbor and his friend shall perish. Thus saith the Lord, behold, a people cometh from a north country, and a great nation shall be raised from the sides of the earth. They shall lay hold on bow and spear. They are cruel, and have no mercy. Their voice roareth like the sea, and they ride upon horses, set in array as men for war against thee, O daughter of Zion. We have heard the fame thereof, our hands wax feeble. Anguish hath taken hold of us, and pain, as of a woman in travail. Go not forth into the field, nor walk by the way, for the sword of the enemy and fear is on every side. And we will pick up today in verse 26. God speaking through Jeremiah, O daughter of my people, gird thee with sackcloth, and wallow thyself in ashes. This was a sign of humility They would rent their garments, and it was a really a humbling experience because it took a lot of work to make a suit of clothes. If you remember the story of Samson when he made the bet with his companions during his wedding week. Ow, I hit my head earlier today and it kind of aches. It kind of went around my scar. I have new curls that I never had before. Right, just kind of follows the shape of the scar. It's really weird, you know. But well, that's not to the point today. The point is that I have to look at myself on this telephone so I can know whether I'm in the picture or not. And I have to look at myself, which is a torture, actually. Believe me, it is. You do well just to listen to this and not look. Um, if you remember Samuel, he got into a bet with his 30 companions for his wedding, and they were all Philistines. Samson didn't have any business being down there in the first place, but that's another story. He made a bet with them, and they said if they could guess his riddle, he'd give each of them a suit of clothes. But if he got the riddle, each of them would have to give him a suit of clothes. And they complained to his bride because they says, did you bring this man down here to impoverish us, to steal all our wealth and take all our money? A suit of clothes represented a lot of work back then. You had to get the raw materials, whether it was flax for linen, or whether it was wool, or you shear the sheep or mohair the goats, whatever it was they were making it out of. They had to spin the material. They had to sew the material. They had to do everything by hand. And so it was a suit of clothes represented a lot of work. And if you bought your clothes in the market, they cost a good amount of money. And so it was a big deal when the people rent their clothes. It was a sign of humility, sign of humidity in Houston. They would grab the neck and they would yank on it and pull, and it would rip. And once it ripped down, it could not be repaired because the neck was usually woven of one piece in the fancier garments, like the one Jesus had that the soldiers cast lots over. Herod gave him that particular robe in Luke chapter 23. If you want to look at it, that's where he got the purple robe. Herod gave it to him, clothed him in it, sent him off. But they would rent their clothes, tear them down the front, and they would be irreparable. They're only good for rags, or maybe you could cut them up and use them for cleaning clothes or something after that, but it wouldn't fit to wear anymore. And then they would pour ashes on their head, or dirt, or a combination thereof. They would go to where they had built the fire, where they cooked the meal, and there would be dirt and ash there, and they would scoop it up in a scoop or in their hands or in a bowl, whatever they had, and pour it on their head. Remember Job, he sat in silence on that hill for 7 days, covered in dust and ashes. And he had that piece of pottery to scrape his sores with. How miserable he must have been. But it was a sign of humbling yourself before God. And it says, oh, my daughter, my people, gird thee with sackcloth. Sackcloth was like their underclothes. And wallow thyself in ashes. They would rent their garments, pull off their top garments. They'd just have their sackcloth on, or their underwear, their BVDs, so to speak. And then they would cover themselves with ashes. And it was for humility. And he says, make thee mourning as for an only son, a most bitter lamentation. Cry to me like you cry for the loss of a child. If you cry for the loss of your only son, that means your name is dead. Your name will not go on in Israel because your son is dead. He will not carry forth your name. I know how that feels. I have 2 grown sons, and I don't expect children out of either one of them because they just doesn't seem important to them and their wives to have children. Well, it's a free country and they can do what they want to do, but I sure wish I had some grandkids. That's why I have rental grandchildren. I've got Malachi and Natalia and Vivian and little Charlie and little Jessie. So they're my only grandchildren I'll ever have. And I delight in them. And Monday morning is when we get together. That's why. Now, just so you know, make thee mourning as for an only son, most bitter lamentation. For the spoiler shall suddenly come upon us. There we go. There we go. It's back on. I'm not sure what happened. It doesn't take a big deal to lose signal here. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to wrap up this verse. We'll take it up tomorrow because I may lose signal again. I don't know what the deal is. Of course, as I've said before, I live in Sticksville, and you never know when the signal's going to go. You just don't know. It says, make thee mourning as for an only son, most bitter lamentation, for the spoiler shall suddenly come upon us. So if you couldn't hear me during that time when we were cut off, we came back on for some reason. I'm going to end the broadcast now. We've already been going 16 minutes, but I spent some time talking about other things. We'll pick up with verse 27 tomorrow. In context, verse 26 was, O daughter of my people, gird thee with sackcloth, and wallow thyself in ashes. Make thee mourning as for an only son, most bitter lamentation, for the spoiler shall suddenly come upon us. The spoiler is coming upon the United States. There is no escape, but God will save and keep you if you come to Him.